I mean, that rubbish program, which is called Media Wash, and is rubbish, and the people in charge of it are rubbish, and the researchers are rubbish. They're rubbish and junk, have been and always will be. But then they run around sniffing, as I think Paul Keating once said, sniffing bicycle seats to see if they can find out a little bit of rubbish and grub on someone.
Sniffing bicycle seats? Alan, I think you're getting overexcited. Welcome to Media Watch 2010. I'm Jonathan Holmes. And even before we got to air, we managed to upset Mr. Jones. We had the temerity to ask if he was being paid for emceeing the appearances of the third Viscount Monckton of Brenchley, free market ideologue, professional controversialist, and debunker-in-chief of climate change science. Well, we're happy to pass on to you the news that...
No, we don't get paid for doing any of this. Pleased to do it as a public service to offer a viewpoint that has been denied. Freedom of speech? You're kidding, aren't you? Our ABC? You are kidding.
Lord Monckton himself had a rather different take on that.
In fact, just let's be fair to ABC. They have, in fact, given me quite a lot of coverage around Australia.
They have indeed.
He's here on a paid lecture tour and he joins me this morning. Christopher Monckton, good morning.
He's in Australia on a month-long speaking tour and he joins us now. Lord Monckton, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Virginia.
Also joining us in the breakfast studio this morning is Lord Christopher Monckton. Lord Monckton, good morning.
Good morning, Fran.
You say you're not a scientist, you're a mathematician. Would it be fair to say you're also a showman?
Well, I don't think that's for me to say, but if you give me an audience, the larger the better, I do enjoy myself.
And enjoy himself he certainly has. Adoring crowds have flocked to his lectures, and climate change sceptics on commercial talkback radio around the country have fawned on him.
Lord Monckton, third Viscount Monckton of Brenchley is in Brisbane today. I met with him with two lovely blokes.
This man has had an enormous impact. Again, not that you would necessarily know it in the broader media.
You wouldn't know it. It's been hard to escape his lordship, wherever you looked and whatever you listened to. What's worried us is not that he's been given airtime, but that some of his most contentious statements have gone almost unchallenged in the Australian media. For example...
I think the United Nations climate panel is now a busted flush. Yeah. For instance, Rajendra Pachauri, its chairman, Sir John Horton, its former chairman, and a number of other people associated with it are now under formal criminal investigation in the United Kingdom for filing false accounts of a charity known as TERI Europe, of which they are all trustees. For the last 3 years, they have underdeclared their income of that charity, saying there was less than £10,000 income each. We've now discovered they were getting income certainly in the millions, and this wasn't being disclosed.
Well, those are serious allegations to be throwing around. But Sir John Horton has told Media Watch,
I am not and have never been a trustee of TERI Europe. I have never received any money at all from TERI Europe. I am writing to Lord Monckton demanding an apology and a public retraction of the libelous statements about me that he has broadcast.
It is true that following complaints made by Lord Monckton, among others, the UK Charity Commission has, it tells us,
contacted the charity and its advisors for further information and are currently assessing this to determine the Commission's role.
That's it. Hardly a formal criminal investigation. According to TERI Europe,
neither TERI Europe nor its trustees have received any complaint from the Charity Commission about its activities, let alone any allegation of criminal conduct.
And then there are Monckton's attacks on global warming science. Few interviewers are equipped to challenge his pronouncements, and even when opposing experts take him on, they find it hard to puncture his ironclad self-confidence.
The Barrier Reef Authority has established that sea temperatures in the region of the reef have not changed at all over the last 30 years.
Rupert? That's simply not true.
I have the figures from the Barrier Reef Authority. I have their chart. I've got it in my slides. I'll be showing it at the ballroom of the Sofitel Hotel at 5:30 in Melbourne today.
Well, we weren't at his lordship's lecture, so we don't know what figures were on his slide. The Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority says it doesn't measure sea temperatures itself and doesn't know where his figures come from. But its chief scientist says that what's important is the trend over the past century or so.
The peer-reviewed science we rely on indicates that there has been an increase in ocean temperatures in the last 130 years, and this significantly impacts on the health of corals in the Great Barrier Reef.
And in fact, the leading authority on the topic has sent us this chart, which does show a recent rise in sea temperature. The fact is, Monckton is a superb showman, and radio is not the forum for complex scientific argument. So he's enjoyed a free ride, especially on commercial talkback radio. His hosts bleat about how sceptics are excluded from the mainstream. But do you think any champion of the majority scientific view on this crucial issue is given similar access to their listeners? As Alan Jones would say, you are kidding. But back to the Great Barrier Reef. Here's a front-page story in our national broadsheet.
Report undercuts PM's reef wipeout. Jamie Walker.
The Australian last Wednesday reported on the latest survey of the reef by the Australian Institute of Marine Science, AIMS for short. Jamie Walker accurately wrote that
after scouring 14 sites at the vulnerable southern end of the Great Barrier Reef last month, the team from Townsville-based AIMS found only a handful of slightly stressed reefs.
Last summer there were predictions of widespread coral bleaching, which didn't occur. This year, Walker reports one scientist as saying,
a deep monsoonal trough, reinforced by tropical cyclones Olga and Neville, had averted doldrums conditions associated with coral bleaching on the reef.
Good news, you'd have thought. But the main point of Walker's story is summed up in his lead paragraph.
Kevin Rudd's insistence that the Great Barrier Reef could be destroyed beyond recognition by global warming grates with new science.
The absence of bleaching for the last 2 years, he continues,
will entrench scepticism about gloomy forecasts for climate change.
And somehow conflicts with an IPCC prediction that
the reef would be subject to annual bleaching by 2030 if climate change continued unchecked.
But all those comments are completely unsupported by the research Walker's reporting on. A lack of bleaching now tells us nothing about what will happen if global warming continues, AIMS told Media Watch. Last Friday, it wrote a letter to The Australian.
Based on rigorous peer-reviewed research, AIMS has found that the science is pointing to potentially severe consequences for the Great Barrier Reef from climate change. Current observations of the state of the reef this year do not contradict this.
And it pointedly added,
it is unhelpful and disappointing to have important and well-founded marine research incorrectly used by The Australian in this way.
So far, The Australian hasn't published that letter. But we did receive a long response to our questions from reporter Jamie Walker. Read it in full on our website. The crucial sentence is this.
Maintaining a healthy scepticism about doom and gloom projections about anything, including climate change, is entirely in order with engendering informed and full debate.
Yes, Jamie, but your views, which aren't shared by the scientists you're quoting, don't belong in a news story. The Australian's opinion pages have openly favoured climate change sceptics for years. That's the paper's right. But this sort of reporting, and it's by no means the first example, entrenches scepticism, shall we say, about the Australian's ability to separate its news coverage from its editorial views.